Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've had several people send me this story, including Rick, regarding the Purell class action lawsuit that was filed recently. And it's been reported widely, including in USA Today. Joshua Boat wrote the article. The manufacturer of Purell hand sanitizer is facing a new class action lawsuit, accusing them of making false and misleading claims that the product can kill 99.99% of illness-causing germs. The latest of several such suits against the parent company come amid shortages of the product due to recent events in the news. And this is one of those things we've been hearing about. There have been people running the store, hoarding and buying things in huge quantities, such that if you go to the store, there are entire aisles that have been wiped clean like a horde of locusts came in. And people are hoarding very strange things. People are hoarding water. And I understand there's some places in the country where water is iffy, depending on circumstances. But I know people who said, I went to a store in a town where, water comes out of faucets. Water falls from the sky. Water comes out of the ground from wells. Water runs down the street when it rains. And yet people go to the store and they buy the stuff that's been bottled in New Jersey that came out of a faucet there. Won't get into that now. But the suit represents 4 people in California, Michigan, Massachusetts, and Oregon, and was filed in the Northern District of Ohio on March 13th. The Northern District of Ohio, and was filed March 13th. According to court documents, the suit says that by citing statistics on its product, the parent company is creating the impression that the effectiveness of its products have a reliable scientific basis, when in fact there is no scientific evidence to support the statistics or other claims. And that, of course, is the allegation in the lawsuit. And of course, they can play this out in court. But one of the other claims they contest is the claim that a single squirt of its sanitizer is twice as effective as its competitors. And that, of course, is something that can be tested in court. The statistics are still present on the labels of the products sold at various stores around the country. But the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, or the CDC as we call it in the biz, advises using hand sanitizer only when soap and water are unavailable. So ideally, soap and water. Next best, hand sanitizer. The lawsuit cites the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's warning that was issued in January about the company. And that often happens. A federal agency makes a comment or issues a statement or a ruling or something, and they single out a product and say, hey, there's a problem with this product. Well, at that point, lawyers can just simply find somebody who've used the product and file a class action lawsuit. And then, of course, if the underlying claims are correct, hilarity ensues. That warning stated the company made a litany of unverified claims on its websites and social media, including that it could prevent a variety of illnesses, much of which relate to or are similar to recent events in the news. The FDA, and this is a quote from the letter the FDA wrote, the FDA is currently not aware of any adequate and well-controlled studies demonstrating that killing or decreasing the number of bacteria or viruses on the skin by a certain magnitude produces a corresponding clinical reduction in infection or disease caused by such bacteria or virus. The president and CEO of the parent corporation said in a statement that these lawsuits are without merit, but cannot comment further due to pending legal action. He said, we stand 100% behind our products. In January, the parent company responded to the FDA allegations by updating its websites and other digital promotional material. This suit follows concerns over profiteering from hand sanitizer shortages, as well as, believe it or not, a scare at the company that makes this stuff involving recent events in the news. So this all is going on right now. And it's, like I said, several people sent me the articles. And I apologize, I can't mention everybody all the time. But Rick sent this one to me. And like I said, it's from USA Today. But I've seen it elsewhere. And this happens from time to time. It also happens in the automotive industry, where like NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, will issue a warning and say, hey, we've discovered something wrong with this particular vehicle. And very quickly, somebody finds somebody who owns one of those vehicles and files a class action on behalf of all the people who own those vehicles. And that can be a safety defect, which NHTSA, of course, might issue a recall on or order a recall on. And, of course, it could also just be a defect that they become aware of. So, here when the FDA, apparently was it the FDA or the CDC, I guess it was the FDA's warning, where the FDA actually said, hey, there's potentially an issue here with your product. You need to watch what claims you make with respect to it. Then, of course, you've got 4 plaintiffs named in a potential class action. And for those of you who are curious, class action lawsuits are where you theoretically have a whole group of people who are harmed similarly, and one or more people step up and say, hey, I want to bring a lawsuit, but not just on my behalf, but on my behalf and all others similarly situated. And the federal courts and most state courts, I wouldn't be surprised if all state courts, allow for that to happen, assuming that certain circumstances are met. And the primary one, and this makes sense, and I've had people say, Steve, class actions are just a tool for attorneys to make lots of money. And it's true that some attorneys do make lots of money off of class actions. And I've actually filed class actions, although I haven't filed any in a long time, but early in my career I handled several. And the point behind a class action, and I'm talking just in general here, not talking about this particular case or recent events in the news, I'm just simply talking about a class action. Let's suppose that something happened in a hypothetical setting within the state of Michigan, and 1,000 people were all harmed in the exact same way. Okay, and so let's suppose that a company is building widgets, and one day they built 1,000 widgets, and every single one of them was defective. We know that for a fact, assume that fact to be true. Those widgets got sold, 1,000 people each, one person per widget, 1,000 people each bought one widget, okay? The widgets don't work. And the company goes, see you in court. Now, each of those people could file an individual action if they wanted to. And with my facts, let's assume they would win. Again, I'm making up facts here. This is a hypothetical. So, if the widget manufacturer is located in, say, Keweenaw County, up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the very, very tip. Very, very little county. Let's suppose that's where the widget manufacturer is located. Eagle River, Michigan. Now, 1,000 people could file lawsuits, and that courthouse would have 1,000 lawsuits to deal with. And that's a lot of work, a lot of administration, and a lot of paper. A lot of trees dying for justice in Keweenaw County, Eagle River, Michigan. Or one person could step up and say, I will be the class rep, and I will watch out for the best interests of my 999 other class members, but I will be the class rep. A court will look at that, and there's a few other factors they look at, but generally speaking, the court will look at it and go, we could handle 1,000 lawsuits or one. And since everything appears to be the same except for the name of the plaintiff, it's the same defendant with 1,000 identical claims. And by the way, if the damages are simply the cost of the widget, the damages are the same. And interestingly enough, people will ask me this, Steve, what if it was a situation where the damages were different per person? If the liability was the same and the defendant was the same and all the plaintiffs agreed to it, you can actually have a class action where you create the class and you handle it that way. And if necessary, you simply have trials on the damages, or you have an agreement on how to calculate the damages. And that's what happened with the Ford dual clutch transmission case. They said, hey, look, there are people out there who bought these cars, brought them in many, 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 many times, and it was just an inconvenience for them. There's other people who brought them in and paid for new transmissions. So obviously there are different categories there. But underlying it all is they have this defective dual clutch transmission. So back to my widget case, the court is going to look at it and understand that trying the one class action is going to be easier than trying the 1,000 cases. Now, somebody's out there is going to say, Steve, in your hypothetical world, maybe, but in real life, 1,000 people won't file that lawsuit, especially not in Keweenaw County. Of course they won't. But if enough of them do, there becomes a tipping point, at which point it is more efficient to try the class action and do that right than it is to try a bunch of cases. And I can tell you that I've had this situation before where, and I've also seen this happen with other attorneys, where they go into court and you seek to certify the class. And of course, the defendants often seek to have it not certified. And that's the one argument you turn to the judge and say, Your Honor, we can start filing these cases individually. At what point is the tipping point? What's the breaking point where suddenly it's more efficient to do it as a class? And that really is the underlying theory here. It's more efficient and it doesn't clog the courts up. But I understand there's arguments on both sides and possibly even 3 or 4 sides on some of those. But that really is the point here. So again, there is a class action that's been filed against the parent company that makes Purell. We'll see what happens, and I will update you as appropriate, along with all other recent events in the news. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. As a computer, I find your faith in technology amusing.